Hey all, it's Dave here again. Hopefully, if you're watching this video, you already know who I am, and you're already familiar with Answers in Reason. If this is your first experience with myself or Answers in Reason, then you can get to know me a little better by checking out my Meet the AiRheads video on the Answers in Reason channel. You can also check out the Meet the AiRheads videos for our other members too, or just check out our other videos and streams. Hopefully there may be more videos there for you to enjoy, or even possibly hate. Either way, please go check them out if you feel so inclined. This video discusses the idea of how easily bad information can spread through the skeptic and atheist community. There are lots of things that atheists and skeptics disagree with each other about. However, there are some things that most atheists and skeptics are in agreement about. The first is that echo chambers are bad. We will often see atheists and skeptics telling theists to get out of their echo chambers and arguing things like echo chambers simply reinforce incorrect and bad ideas. Another thing that many atheists and skeptics agree on is that suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect is bad. We will often see atheists and skeptics use this as an insult against theists, anti-vaxxers, flat earthers, and the like. So from this, we should be able to gather that the average atheist and skeptic is critical of both echo chambers and people who suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect. However, does being critical of those things extend only to those who do not claim to be skeptics and atheists? Or are skeptics and atheists critical of the same in our own communities at the same time? Does our being critical of it give rise to us being more cautious of it? Or is it something that is simply overlooked in our own communities? This video will explore these questions, giving an internal critique to the skeptic and atheist communities. First, we will look at what the Dunning-Kruger effect is, and how echo chambers can actually reinforce the Dunning-Kruger effect within our own communities. We will look at examples where there are examples of the Dunning-Kruger effect taking hold, and how the community reinforces the Dunning-Kruger effect. If I was to ask you to describe the Dunning-Kruger effect right now, how would you respond? Would your answer be something akin to, it's when someone is too stupid to know how stupid they are? If that was your answer, how would you respond if I told you that was inaccurate? Would you argue that I didn't know what I was talking about? Or would you pause and question what you thought the Dunning-Kruger effect is? If your response would be to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about, then you may be suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect. So, what is the Dunning-Kruger effect? What the Dunning-Kruger effect describes is actually a form of cognitive bias, and it relates to our own estimations of our skill levels. The cognitive bias describes when people with limited competency or knowledge in any given topic or area overestimate their competency or knowledge in that given topic or area. This effect, according to David Dunning and Justin Kruger, is explained by the fact that in order for a person to recognize the deficiencies in their own knowledge and competency, they must first have at least a minimal level of knowledge and competency in the given area or topic. Due to individuals suffering from deficiencies in that topic, they are unaware of their own deficiencies. The individual being unaware of those deficiencies then causes them to overestimate just how knowledgeable or competent they are. So, as I stated, if you answered that the Dunning-Kruger effect was something akin to when someone is too stupid to realize just how stupid they are, then you were incorrect. That is not the same as saying that you were suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect, though. It's possible to just be incorrect. However, if when I told you that you were wrong, you immediately jumped to the conclusion that it was me that was incorrect, then you may have been exhibiting signs of the Dunning-Kruger effect. If you spent the entire time that I was describing the Dunning-Kruger effect telling yourself that you were right and I was wrong, then you definitely were suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect. This shouldn't be taken as an insult, and it's definitely not intended as an insult. David Dunning and Justin Kruger's research shows that we all suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect to some degree. What I described is not even the entirety of their findings, as the Dunning-Kruger can affect those with some competency as well, only they misjudge their competency level in a slightly different way. However, the part that I described is the idea that best resembles the too stupid to know how stupid you are that is commonly floated by atheists and skeptics. I can understand why someone may take me pointing out that they are suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect as an insult, though. After all, it's commonly used by atheists and skeptics to insult others. However, rather than take it as an insult, instead take it as encouragement to pause and reflect for a moment. It is, after all, perfectly understandable that someone in the atheist or skeptic community might define it in that way. After all, it's a definition that is popularized in the atheist and skeptic community, and there are many in said communities that define it that way. This definition gets passed around from person to person, and those new to the idea or the communities will also come to pick up the same definition. This idea is then reinforced by members who have been involved in the community for much longer, confirming the idea by arguing against those that use it differently. This creates an environment that gives the appearance that this description is correct. It also creates an environment that gives the appearance that other descriptions are incorrect. This description is taken as canon, so to speak. Of course, the problem is that it is not correct. What they are describing is not the Dunning-Kruger effect. Not only that, but the environment has also created a situation where the correct answer is seen as incorrect. This situation also creates another situation where those holding the incorrect definition will argue that the correct definition is incorrect. Due to the nature of the community, others that hold to the incorrect definition will come to the defense of others arguing against the correct definition, thus creating a kind of self-affirming and self-reinforcing form of the Dunning-Kruger effect. So, as stated, it's understandable that people may come to have bad information. And it's understandable that there is a certain level of Dunning-Kruger going on in the community. We may not realize it and may even deny it, but there is very much an echo chamber-like effect that goes on in both the skeptic and atheist community. An echo chamber that reinforces bad thinking, bad ideas, misinformation, and the Dunning-Kruger effect when it comes to a lot of topics. There is also much more that influences this, of course, but this gives a basic idea of just how easy it is for bad ideas and misinformation to proliferate through the atheist and skeptic community, and to cause a self-affirming and self-reinforcing form of the Dunning-Kruger effect to happen, and to continue on, and worst of all, to be defended. Of course, we could argue here that this is just a single word on a single topic, and therefore isn't anything that we should worry too much about. However, doing that would be far too dismissive. First, consider how easily that simple concept was misunderstood, and how quickly and easily that misinformation spread and was accepted. If it could happen that easily with the concept and definition of the Dunning-Kruger effect, then how many other ideas and claims are simply atheists and skeptics repeating and reinforcing other misinformation and bad ideas? Consider the following statements. Atheism is a lack of belief in God, and that's it. I don't believe evolution. I accept it as a fact. A belief is something we accept on faith. Once you have knowledge, you no longer need belief. You can't prove a negative. All of these statements and claims are pretty common in the atheist and skeptic community. They're all statements that we see appear often on Twitter and Facebook. When it comes to the first statement, atheism is a lack of belief in God and that's it, there are entire videos on YouTube dedicated to arguing for it, and sites like American Atheists and Randolph Richardson's DefineAtheism.com argue it. It's also promoted by a lot of the most popular names in the atheist community, like Matt Dillahunty and AiRheads. Discussions about the first statement will usually get pretty heated, and those disputing it will be dogpiled by other atheists, and some going as far as blocking people for disputing it. However, each of the statements I mentioned is often defended by many atheists and skeptics. Now, what if I was to tell you that each and every one of those statements and claims is actually incorrect? Each and every one of those statements is actually incorrect. We already have a video on our channel discussing the fact that the term atheism has multiple valid usages. And there's a similar video on Rationality Rules' channel. We also have videos discussing what a belief is here on our channel. And we also have various videos discussing various ideas of knowledge. Those interested in logic will also understand that the statement, "you can't prove a negative," is an erroneous claim as well. Stephen Law has written a fantastic article discussing this claim that is worth looking at if you believe the statement, "you can't prove a negative." There will be links left in the description to all of these things that I just mentioned for anyone that wishes to confirm that each of the statements mentioned is false. I can understand anyone that wants to doubt what I've said, and I can understand people wanting me to show evidence that each of those statements is false. However, that's not the purpose of this video. The intent of this video is not to disprove faulty claims that are popular with atheists. It would also be treading ground that has already been tread by us. For those interested in checking the information out, it will be there. The purpose of this video and this argument is instead to look at how easily bad claims are spread around the atheist and skeptic community, and how those bad claims are also defended by many skeptics and atheists. This video is instead a look at how many atheists fail to apply critical thinking to the many claims and statements popular within the atheist community, and how atheists and skeptics are responsible for the spread of the Dunning-Kruger Effect within said communities. One of the many positives that come from the atheist and skeptic community is the promotion of critical thinking. We often hear atheists and skeptics talk about how important critical thinking is, and that's something I wholeheartedly agree with. Critical thinking is important, which is one of the reasons we here at Answers in Reason make the kind of content we do. We think that it is not just important for skeptics and atheists to promote critical thinking, it's also important for atheists and skeptics to be critical thinkers themselves. Being a critical thinker is more than just rejecting religion, or asking for evidence for claims, or simply calling yourself a critical thinker. We also do not automatically become critical thinkers simply by labeling ourselves skeptics or atheists, something I would imagine many skeptics and atheists would agree with. One part of critical thinking is not just the questioning of the claims made by them, it's also important to be critical of us. One of the first steps to being a critical thinker is to not assume that everything we think is correct because it's popular within the community that we exist in. Simply because some statement or claim is popular within our community, or made by people whose word seems to carry weight among the community, or is a popular figure within our community, that doesn't mean it's right. The next step then is to examine those popular claims and statements critically. Why have we come to believe those statements and claims are correct? Why have we accepted those statements and claims? Have we done our due diligence with those statements before accepting them? These are all questions we should be asking of those popular claims and statements. After all, statements are not true by virtue of who made them, or the community they come from, or because they are popular within our community. It is not the mark of a good critical thinker, or the mark of a good free thinker, to simply go with the crowd. As can be seen from what has been said in this video, it's pretty easy for misinformation to spread within a community when left unchecked and defended uncritically. We should think about why we are accepting the statements and claims, and we should check those statements and claims. Another popular saying within the skeptic and atheist communities is, "Evidence will change my mind." Yet, oftentimes when these popular statements and claims are challenged and evidence provided that they are wrong, many skeptics and atheists will not change their mind. Instead, they will continue to defend what is obviously incorrect. And other atheists and skeptics will join in that defending of what is obviously incorrect. Sometimes going as far as blocking the people making the correct argument, or claiming that the person making the correct argument simply doesn't know what they were talking about, which is the furthest thing from the mark when it comes to being a critical thinker. This is actually another one of the reasons that I decided to go with simply leaving links to places so people can start a search for refuting some of the popular claims and statements. I did so for those who believe those claims and statements and argue that they are correct, and also claim to be critical thinkers. There is the evidence that those popular claims and statements are false. Does that evidence change your mind? Or do you dismiss the evidence in favor of the faulty claims and statements? If you dismiss the evidence in favor of those faulty claims and statements, then why? Think deeply about the reasons why you dismiss the evidence, and think carefully about whether or not you make claims like evidence will change my mind, or atheists need evidence to believe something. Also consider your rejection of the evidence the next time you accuse a theist of rejecting evidence in favor of what they want to be true. So, I get that this video and the argument made in it may seem like an attack on the atheist and skeptic community. I also understand that there may be many that may take this personally. However, it's not intended as an attack on the atheist and skeptic community, nor is it intended to attack anyone personally. Instead, this is intended as a promotion of critical thinking. It's just that this particular promotion of critical thinking is aimed at the communities I exist in and belong to. And one of the signs of a healthy intellectual community is that it is open to internal critiques and discussion. The video is aimed at showing a place where that critical thinking fails to be applied by many in those communities, and at a foundational and important level. As stated at the beginning of the video, the Dunning-Kruger is something that affects us all in some way, and that includes me. The Dunning-Kruger effect is when we overestimate our own competency in certain areas. We consider our knowledge and our ability to be far greater than it actually is because we don't know how little we know. We have not looked into the topic in any real way, and that means we do not understand how little we actually know about the topic. This also leads to errors in judgment, and it leads to us rejecting the information of those that actually do know about the topic. We dismiss them as unknowledgeable because they disagree with what we believe or what is popular in our community, rather than based on their arguments or their credentials. So, one way to better our critical thinking is to keep this in mind at all times. Keep in mind that we all suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect to some degree. When confronted by someone who criticizes our views or argues that our view is wrong, there are several questions that we can ask ourselves. Where did we learn this information? Have we studied this information? Or has all of our information come from what we have heard from people in the community? If it has come from people in our community, then where did they get this information? Was it something they heard? Or are they educated in the matter at hand? Have they studied the topic at hand? These are some basic questions that can be asked before assuming the other person is the one that is wrong. Of course, there are those that we do not need to go through quite so much effort for. For example, we can somewhat assume that when somewhere like Answers in Genesis puts forward an anti-evolution argument, that they are working from an agenda, or that they're not being honest. We can learn as we go sources that do not need quite as much effort to dismiss, dispute, or whether or not what they say should challenge what we believe we know. However, the existence of these kind of examples does nothing to support the idea that all that we come across are worthy of dismissal because they think differently to us or claim we are wrong. This is something that we pick up in practice, which is another important part of critical thinking. Practice. Critical thinker is more than just a t-shirt slogan or a hashtag or not believing God exists. Being a critical thinker is something that takes effort and work and study and practice. It's a process and a technique, and it involves more than just doubting people. It involves the recognition of our own limits, the principle of charity, doing our best to understand the other person's argument, and much more. It also involves taking an honest look at our own beliefs and the acceptance that many of our beliefs and ideas may have come from errant sources. Critical thinking is something that takes a lot of practice to make it something that becomes a disposition and becomes a natural process of our thinking. As with anything, there's so much more that can be said about this topic. However, this video was not meant to be a deep dive into critical thinking or a tutorial on how to be the best critical thinker possible. The topic and title have probably already turned off many atheists and skeptics, and probably many that could do with thinking about the topic that I've brought up, which is what the intent of the video was. to get atheists and skeptics thinking about the topic that I've just brought up, to think about how easily it is for bad information to spread around a community, even the atheist and skeptic community. How easy it is not only to allow the Dunning-Kruger effect to take hold in each and every one of us, but how easy it is for that Dunning-Kruger effect to spread bad information and for us to become echo chambers that continue to reinforce it. It is one of the causes of us defending bad arguments, bad claims, bad statements, and misinformation. Hopefully, the discussion in the video will give rise to some atheists and skeptics taking a pause and questioning how good their critical thinking skills are, which hopefully will give rise to them thinking about how they can improve their own critical thinking skills. The simple step of us acknowledging our own cognitive biases, like the Dunning-Kruger effect, and then using that acknowledgement to improve our interactions can lead to better critical thinking. Of course, it's not the whole of critical thinking, but simply a first step to better thinking. We must then still take our first steps into looking at how to be better critical thinkers, such as picking up books on the topic or enrolling in classes, either physical or online ones like Stephen Law's course on critical thinking. Some of the suggestions in this video may help in the most basic way, but they are in no way a substitute for actual study into critical thinking. As stated, critical thinking is not a switch to be turned on and then we are suddenly critical thinkers. It's not a t-shirt slogan or a hashtag on a profile. It's practice. It's a disposition and a skill. And like any other skill, it comes from hard work.